Welcome to the official opening of the Data Analytics Centre. We have been looking forward to this date here at the Danish Medicines Agency. Circumstances have defined the setting of this opening event. We would have loved to see as many of you as possible here in our building, but that'll have to be at a different point in time. However, technology is today combining what the current pandemic is dividing. So we are humbled today to be able to share opening speeches from people across Denmark and Europe to set the scene for what we believe will be an important initiative, not only in Denmark, but across Europe and hopefully with a global outreach. We will today have remarks from patient organizations throughout the opening. We'll hear from Torben Mogensen, the chair of the Danish Lung Association, Morten Frejl, the director of the Organization for Danish Patients, Jesper Fisker, the executive director for the Danish Cancer Society, and Christian Hessager, the chair of the Danish Heart Association, who will give their views, hopes and wishes to what the Data Analytics Centre can and should do to benefit patients. We will be hearing from the Director General of the Danish Medicines Agency and the current chair of the Heads of Medicine Agencies, Thomas Senderovitz. The Danish Minister of Health, Magnus Heunicke, will be addressing the opening from the Danish perspective. And the new Executive Director of EMA, Emer Cooke, is addressing the opening from the view of the European Medicines Agency. We are also humbled to have talks from the European Commission through Clay Burry, who is the Deputy Director of DG Santé. Finally, we'll have the two co-chairs of the Big Data Steering Group, a joint initiative between the heads of medicines agencies and the European Medicines Agency to talk about big data initiatives and how the opening of the Danish Data Analytics Centre is an important component in achieving the highly ambitious laid out work plan that they're put forward. First, I would like to welcome Thomas Senderovitz, the Director General of the Danish Medicines Agency and the Chair of the Heads of Medicine Agencies, to talk about the Data Analytics Centre, the journey so far and the journey ahead for advancing data analytics in the Danish Medicines Agency and internationally.
Honored guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's an extraordinary pleasure to welcome you to the opening of the new Data Analytics Centre here at the Danish Medicines Agency. I am truly excited about the fact that we are now creating capabilities and competences for analysing data within our agency. This marks the beginning of a new era in Europe, an era of data-driven regulatory agency assessments and advice. In close collaboration with other national competent authorities and the European Medicines Agency, we strive to bring Europe to the forend of data analytics as an absolute key of the regulatory decision-making. The overall purpose of regulatory authorities is to ensure that our citizens have access to efficacious and safe medicines and, of course, also safe medical devices. This is our raison d'être. This is why we go to work every morning. We don't go to work physically for the time being, unfortunately, but this is our raison d'être. By stepping up on the data front and building capabilities and competences within this area of data analytics, we are significantly improving the fundament for our mission. The involvement of all stakeholders has been and will remain a cornerstone of the Data Analytics Centre. Involving patients is fundamental, and ensuring their involvement is a given. The Centre will collaborate closely with leading universities. We are thrilled to have such strong expertise in data analysis and data science in Denmark, and the setup of a strong collaboratory framework is essential for the success of the Centre. With our close involvement of the life science industry, we would not successfully be able to implement various analytical methodologies and provide meaningful scientific advice to industry. The European Medicines Regulatory Network has been working very focused on establishing a strategic basis for the new data-driven regulatory framework through the work of the HMA-EMA Task Force on Big Data, which were in fact co-chaired by us in the Danish Medicines Agency and has been launched now and we have been working on this since its inception a few years ago. At this point in time, in 2020, the need for collaboration and better use of data has become even more relevant during the COVID-19 pandemic, and the timing of the opening of our new Data Analytics Centre is rather good, I would say. The added value of data-driven regulatory authorities is quite clear. Data generated both during the development of new medicines and data existing already or being created in multiple registries and databases, so-called real-world data, will allow us to much better follow the medicine during the entire life cycle, and thus create a strong foundation for faster and better regulatory decisions. Denmark has one of the most extensive health data registries in the world. The vast amount of patient-level data on everything from treatment regimens over experienced adverse effects to socioeconomic factors constitutes a unique possibility for the use of big data analytics to discover hidden patterns for the benefit of the patients. In addition, by setting up an infrastructure in the new center will allow us for analysis of clinical trials data and much strengthen the regulatory advice possibilities to industry, and then, of course, better decision making. New medicines and medical devices are developed by the life science industry, and the area is, as you know, highly regulated. Thus, much better equipped regulatory authorities, such as our own, including high levels of quantitative agency expertise, will create a much stronger environment for faster and better development of these new treatments. Better scientific advice from the agencies to the industry during the development of novel innovative medicines are absolutely key in the process. This is even more important when we are talking about highly innovative medicines, for example, vaccines or new cancer drugs. Such advice minimizes the chance of failed programs, failed clinical studies, and hence lack of innovative medicines to patients in need in due time. Development of new medicines and medical devices is often a global effort, and most new medicines are brought to patients across the world by global collaborations and global companies. Thus, strong international collaboration in this field is essential. The Danish Medicines Agency and the new Data Analytics Centre already has strong collaborations across the globe. In addition to working closely with our EU collaborators, we have bilateral scientific collaboration with US FDA, the Japanese PMDA, the Chinese NMPA, just to mention a few. Our Data Analytics Centre is a big step towards a future where we can take full advantage of all the data that we have available, to more dynamic approval of new medicines and vaccines, to provide the industry with even better scientific advice, to better monitoring of adverse effects, and to provide decision makers with the facts they need to make the best possible choices for our society. I am proud and very, very happy to be able to welcome you all to this important event, the opening of our new Data Analytics Centre. Thank you.
Danish Lung Association is an organization which fights for lung patients and fight against lung diseases. And lung diseases is a very severe diseases. And we think that Data Analytics Centre is very important in the fight for our patients, because medicine is a very important part of the treatment of patients with lung diseases, and surveillance and data about the treatment, the medical treatment, is so important for our patients so they can achieve a good life. And we also expect that we can get data to evaluate how the patient's life are performing, is getting better. Can we get new medicine? Is there side effects of the medicine? So without data, no fight. if you don't have data, you can't fight for your patients and you can't fight for our members. So we welcome once more Data Analytics Centre as a very important partner in the fight for our patients. So we are very satisfied with the data center, and we look forward to further cooperation.
Our next speaker is like many other ministers of health around the world, working around the clock to deal with the pandemic. Unfortunately, that also meant that the opening speech by Magnus Heunicke, scheduled for today, unfortunately not could happen. We thank Magnus for the willingness to wanted to speak to us, but we will have to have Magnus talk to us at a later point in time.
So I would like to congratulate the Danish Medicines Agency with the Data Analytics Centre. We very much look forward to see the centre in action. We know that from several research studies in Denmark, we know that Danish patients are willing to share their healthcare data for quality improvement and for research. And we know that actually most Danish patients expect that the data are used for improving treatment and care for the benefit of future patients. And that's why we very much look forward to see the Data Analytics Centre in action. Real-world data will give us more information about the effects and the side effects of medicine and medical devices, data collected real-world in a Danish context, and that's very important. From a patient perspective, we know that, of course, we should demand that the approval of medicine and medical devices are based on sufficient and relevant data, but we also know that often we see that the approval of medicine is based on very small clinical trials conducted in other countries, in other healthcare settings, other healthcare systems. And often there's a lot of uncertainty about the effects and the side effects. So by using real-world data, we will get more knowledge about how the medicine and the medical devices actually perform in a Danish context, in the Danish healthcare system. So we will know more about if the Danish patients actually gain from the treatment and care rather than being harmed due to the side effects. So we actually look forward to collaborate with the centre. We find it very important that patients, the patient associations and the public are involved in the discussions about how data is collected, how it's analyzed and how it's used in the future. That's important to protect the privacy of the patients, to safeguard the patient's self-determination, and also to make sure that the patients in the future are willing to share their healthcare data for the benefit of future patients. So we look forward to see the centre in action, and congratulations to the medical agency.
Our next speaker has just recently taken her current position, probably one of the busiest roles in the world. Emer, Cooke, Executive Director of the European Medicines Agency, will speak to us next. European Medicines Agency is currently also on an important journey forward after settling in at their new offices in Amsterdam. So I'm really delighted that Emer today will talk to us about the Darwin initiatives and the need for collaboration across Europe on these regulatory new challenges within data analytics. Over to you, Emer.
Many thanks for inviting me to the opening of the Health Data Analytics Centre. I am very pleased to be able to support this as it contributes to a central pillar of my vision for innovative, science-based, public health-focused and data-driven medicines regulation. The pace of change in technology in data science and in healthcare is unprecedented. This change brings enormous opportunities to improve the health of European citizens through innovation, better regulation, and learning from healthcare data. From political to technical level, there is a unanimous acknowledgement that the time has come to realise the potential of healthcare data. The European Commission's digital and data strategies, adopted in early 2020, set out a bold vision for health data, including the creation of a European health data space. Commissioner President Ursula von der Leyen has set out the ambitious target of adopting a legal proposal to create this European health data space by the end of 2021. EMA is committed to support the Commission in implementing this ambition. This is reinforced at a technical level also. HMA and EMA Management Board have unanimously adopted the Big Data Task Force recommendations to deliver data-driven medicines regulation. The task force was co-chaired by the Danish Medicines Agency and the European Medicines Agency, and the same recommendations are included in EMA's regulatory science strategy and are central to the network strategy to 2025. This repeated endorsement for data-driven medicines regulation is an agenda for change to ensure medicines regulation is fit for the decades to come and continues to evolve and deliver for the patients of Europe. My vision for data-driven medicines regulation foresees that we innovate to turn data into decisions on medicines that create a healthier world. So how can this vision be delivered? First and foremost, we must deliver through collaboration, leveraging the best each stakeholder can bring, and through celebrating excellence, such as the Centre of Excellence in Data Analytics that we are celebrating today. We need to catalogue and to understand the healthcare data that we have in Europe. This data is a fantastic resource, but we need to understand its strengths and weaknesses and ensure that the data can be accessed and analysed for the benefits of public health. We need to ensure that medicines regulation is underpinned by expertise. Expertise will not only come from regulatory agency staff, but also through expert advice, which we can leverage from academia. We need to be able to analyse individual patient data, both from real-world sources and from clinical trials, building the capability, both human and technological, for this analysis is a core pillar to the realisation of this vision. We need to ensure that all of our work with healthcare data is governed by a strong ethical framework and full compliance with data protection legislation. And we need two last ingredients, Darwin EU and Centres of Analytics Excellence. Both of these I will elaborate on further. Let me turn first to Darwin EU. Darwin EU is the principal recommendation of the data pillar of the EU network strategy to 2025. Darwin stands for the Data Analytics and Real-World Interrogation Network, and the central premise is to establish a secure, distributed network of real-world data to enable federated access and analysis that supports the development, authorization, and on-market monitoring of medicines. Currently in Europe, we have rich healthcare data, but real-world data is rarely fully leveraged for public health benefits at a European level. I strongly believe that establishing Darwin EU will bring major benefits for European patients. It will enable regulators to support the pharmaceutical industry in the development of medicines. It will contextualize marketing authorization applications with evidence from the real world, and it will allow the performance of medicine safety and effectiveness to be monitored once on the market. Additionally, Darwin EU will provide an invaluable resource to prepare for and respond to further healthcare crises and pandemics. But the potential benefits go beyond medicines regulation. I see clear benefits for health technology assessment bodies, for payers, and for healthcare systems if we can all pull together and deliver Darwin EU. I call on the European Commission to support this vision and its delivery. This project requires Commission funding to build the network and a change in Europe's fee regulation to ensure that the benefits are sustainable and long-term. The European Commission President has spoken of delivering a European health data space. Darwin EU can support the Commission to deliver better medicines for EU patients and can be a concrete European health data space deliverable with tangible benefits for European citizens, visible through the course of the current European Commission. The last ingredient to deliver the vision is really about Denmark. Denmark can help to deliver this. A data-driven medicines regulation is anchored here in healthcare data in Denmark and is the work of the Danish Medicines Agency and the Data Analytics Centre. For many decades, Denmark has been recognized for the excellence of its healthcare registries. The Danish Medicines Agency has been a principal player in the European regulatory system, and in recent years, through Thomas Senderovitz, the agency has provided important leadership at HMA and particularly in big data and real-world evidence. Today, we are celebrating this. We are celebrating the Danish Data Analytics Centre, and I'm confident that the strong heritage in health data and established expertise in medicines regulation in Denmark will enable the Data Analytics Centre to be a true centre of excellence for healthcare data, helping to deliver the vision that I have set out today. I am more than confident that the Danish Data Analytics Centre will work with EMA, with the national competent authorities and with the European Commission to support a vision where we can innovate to turn data into decisions on medicines that can create a healthier and better world. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm extremely pleased to be able to speak at this opening event for the Danish Centre, and I will support its work going forward. Through centres of excellence such as this and collaboration across Europe, we can deliver our vision for data-driven medicines regulation and better medicines for EU patients. Thank you very much.
Congratulations. This might prove to be a very important day. Since it's important to all of us to know the effects of very expensive medicines, very expensive treatment, very expensive devices within the cancer treatment, and indeed within all other treatment areas. The clinical trials are not what they used to be. Nowadays, medicine is introduced on the basis of clinical trials with only rather few patients, or maybe just phase 2 clinical trials. So this initiative will make it possible to follow the consequences of the medicine on a longer time perspective, and might give us the possibility of detecting sometimes even very severe side effects through the lifetime of a medicine. The new Data Analytics Centre will give us the possibility to follow medicine throughout the entire life circle. It will give us the possibility of focusing on lifelong effects on real-world evidence. It will push the innovation and research into areas to meet still unmet patient needs. In Denmark, we have a tradition of medicines being introduced rapidly. My hope is, with the new centre, we will have the possibility of introducing medicines relevant to the patients on an even more rapid basis. That would be of great benefit for the cancer patients and for all patients in Denmark indeed. Good luck.
The European Commission has begun an ambitious journey towards 2025 to create the European health data space, to enable a common system of data governance, rules for data exchange, data quality, strong infrastructure and interoperability. To put the opening of the Data Analytics Centre into this perspective, I'm delighted to have Claire Burry, the Deputy Director of DG Santé, speak to us today. Over to you, Claire.
Dear Minister, dear colleagues, it's a pleasure to be here with you today to celebrate the official opening of the Danish Medicines Agency Data Analytics Centre. This is an inspiring achievement for Denmark as well as for Europe. I would like to warmly congratulate all of you that have worked hard to make this day possible, and I'd also like this morning to talk about how your achievement here can be inspirational for Europe. I see this achievement as a tangible step towards a common Commission objective. Just over a year ago, as she took up office as the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen highlighted the need to maximise the potential of e-health, to provide high-quality healthcare and to reduce inequalities. The digital transformation is affecting the development, manufacture, evidence generation, assessment and use of medicines. Medicines, medical technologies and digital health are becoming increasingly integral to overarching therapeutic options. Specifically, last year, our Commission President asked to prioritise the creation of a European health data space to enable the use and reuse of health data for better healthcare provision, better research and innovation, and better policy making. I consider that the Danish Medicines Agency Data Analytics Centre could be an important foundation stone of the European health data space and its digital services and infrastructure, an example to be shared and followed by others. The Data Analytics Centre represents the Danish strategy and willingness to invest in harvesting the highest benefit from health data. By combining the most advanced data-intensive technologies, Denmark aims, for example, to spot side effects quicker and to optimise the process for assessing new medicines. This innovation has the potential to positively impact the life of children and patients with rare diseases, groups that are often overlooked due to a lack of data or availability of participants for clinical trials. Can you imagine how meaningful it could be for European citizens if we could drive health innovation based on insights generated not only from Danish data, but also from EU-wide real-world data? It's time to build this future, a future where reliable health data and the most promising health technologies are at the service of health systems while ensuring the privacy and freedoms of individuals. It's time to narrow the gap in health analytics between the EU and our global competitors. And it's time to bring us closer to European strategic autonomy regarding the secondary use of health data. It's time to look into new methods of evidence generation and assessment, such as analysis of big and real-world data to support the development, authorisation and use of medicines. The vision of the European health data space is to promote health data availability to support research on preventative strategies, as well as on treatments, medicines, medical devices and outcomes. A common interoperability and governance framework are needed to ensure that relevant initiatives like yours are fully integrated into the European data space. The European Council has taken up the suggestion of President von der Leyen and has made an ambitious commitment to set up the European health data space by the end of 2021. The Commission, of course, is working towards this and will set up a digital infrastructure that will allow for better use of data for research and regulatory purposes. This digital infrastructure will be preceded by a pilot project involving some member states, as well as the ECDC and the European Medicines Agency. Taking into consideration Denmark's advanced status in exploring Danish health data and exploiting it, we invite Denmark to join this pilot project. The European health data space cannot be set up without an important commitment from member states. This requires supporting institutions, dealing with secondary use of health data, but also investments in data quality and data infrastructures. The multi-annual financial framework, including the Recovery and Resilience Facility, offers important opportunities in this regard, and I hope that the national and EU opportunities will be widely used in this respect. In the area of medicines, there has already been a great deal of work in mapping the issues related to big data. The Emer Joint Big Data Task Force published its report in January and made 10 recommendations. The EU network of medicines agencies is already looking into how the recommendations can be implemented to better harness the potential of big data. The example of your analysis of the use of NSAIDs in COVID-19 patients shows the potential of being able to access patient data to investigate potential adverse events. You should be proud and celebrate the achievement today. As you do so, we would encourage you to become one of the founding partners of the European health data space. With a joint commitment, we can make your Data Analytics Centre and the European health data space deliver on their promise. So once again, congratulations, enjoy your event, and I'm very pleased to have been with you briefly today. Thank you very much.
In Denmark, we have a long-lasting tradition for collecting health care data for administrative purposes. And this gives Denmark a unique position for using these data for research and quality control in the healthcare system, for the benefit of both the individual patient and the Danish society. The initiative of the Danish Medicines Agency to establish a dedicated Data Analytics Centre gives further opportunities for putting these unique data in place in even larger scale. Most patients with cardiovascular disease receive many different medications, and some have complicated devices implanted. These many interventions may individually have a small but significant effect. This necessitates thousands of patients in the pivotal trials. Post-marketing surveillance of medication and devices is therefore especially important for cardiovascular patients. Employing new methods for analyzing data on drug and device effectiveness, interactions, and identifying unknown side effects will generate new knowledge that will help us to select the most optimal treatment for the individual patients. In Denmark, we have more than 500,000 people who live with a cardiovascular disease. And in the Danish Heart Foundation, we work on supporting these patients through counseling, prevention, and funding of research. Therefore, the Danish Heart Foundation welcomes this initiative with focus on better and safer treatment for our patients. Thank you.
Over the past years, a task force between the heads of medicine agencies and the European Medicines Agency has worked on analyzing and recommended actions needed to fully make use of the increased data volumes, known as big data, but also patient-level data from clinical trials, advancing the analytical methods within analyzing these data and increasing computer power at hand that we have. 2 reports have been issued by the task force. Subsequent, a work plan on how to execute on these recommendations have been endorsed by HMA and EMA, and thus forming a steering group to oversee the execution of the 10 most important areas within these reports. An ambitious goal to transform the regulatory field in Europe towards 2025. To share the background and the path forward on this ambitious work plan are the 2 co-chairs from the Big Data Steering Group, Nikolai Brun and Peter Arlett. I'm really glad that you had time today to talk to us. Could you please share with us how you're going to make all of this happen?
Absolutely. And I would be happy to take the first part of the question, and then I will hand over to you, Peter, my good colleague, as co-chair of the Big Data Steering Group. There's a history to this work, and the history is that over a year ago, the Big Data Task Force, as it was then known, published the first report on what needed to be addressed in this rapidly changing big data landscape. We know that there are technological challenges that are coming at an accelerated pace that we as regulators need to get ready for. And the basic structure of the Big Data Task Force, the first report, was to outline and map all of the actions that need to be done in order to succeed in this very rapidly evolving landscape. This was then followed by ranking the recommendations, structuring the recommendations into a more how-oriented landscape. So if the first report addressed the what needed to be addressed, the second report basically tried to address how do we go about this? how do we structure all these recommendations and how can we possibly implement this? And it was structured into 47 recommendations, 10 of which we have outlined as the top 10 recommendations, and they are present in the Big Data Steering Group work plan, which is now published on both the HMA and EMA websites. And it basically outlines how the steering group would now work. And it's important that we now underline that this is now a steering group, because the initial mapping work on what needs to be done, how it can be done, that was terminated by the Big Data Task Force. And the HMA and EMA leadership gave an endorsement of the work and said, now we change tracks. Now we go into the next phase about implementing all these recommendations. And that is now the task of the Big Data Steering Group, which is still a joint operation between the EMA and the HMA on how to implement these recommendations. So it's basically a structure for how we navigate in this big data landscape and how we can roll out a lot of these very important initiatives. And Peter, perhaps you will comment on how do we actually see this implementation going on in reality?
Yeah, so thanks, Nikolai. I was struck by the question, how do we make it happen? And actually the charge that the Big Data Steering Group has got is making it happen based on those famous 10 recommendations published back in January. And I think rather than going through those recommendations individually, I think the key point are, what are the building blocks? And the first building block, which is the critical building block, is people. The European Medicines Regulatory Network, its strength is people. Its strength is the diversity of expertise brought by the different member states as well as EMA. And a number of the recommendations and the actions coming from them are about building the expertise within the network. And that's about training staff in the national competent authorities under EMA. It's also about working with experts outside the immediate regulatory network, for example, in academia. It's about reinforcing and strengthening expert working groups within the EMA to support the CHMP and the other committees. And so that's the people ingredient of making it happen. The next ingredient is about technology, and clearly big data and analytics require us to be able to capture, manage in a secure way, analyze, visualize data, and there are a number of actions around that. And then the third is very much about the how do we do it? And that's about collaboration and leveraging the work of others. Clearly, medicines regulators are not always the experts in big data, and and there's also a huge amount of activity at European and international level, as well as we're talking about today, the Danish Centre, or lots going on at national level as well. And we need to leverage all of those efforts so that we can achieve the most through working with others. So those, I would say, are the building blocks. I don't know, Nikolai, if you would add anything to that, or maybe you could make it real by giving us an example of one of the areas that we're working on.
Yeah, I think that handling data is not new for the regulatory network. We have been looking at data from innovators, from companies developing new therapies, new medicines for the benefit of the European populations for decades. So looking at data is not new, and we have primarily done it through looking at the results of clinical trials, randomized controlled clinical trials that we know are by far the best way to eliminate bias, statistical bias, other sources of bias. Randomized controlled clinical trials have been, and in our view, always will be, the cornerstone of developing rational new therapies for the benefit of the population. But it is also true that we have not looked at the individual patient level data. We have looked at the summaries generated by the companies, the analysis generated by the companies, and if we had questions, we may have gone back to the company and say, could you do this analysis, could you change this view? But we have not had the capacity to actually do the analysis ourselves. We have not had the raw data in-house to repeat the analysis that the innovators have submitted for our evaluation. And this is an important new paradigm shift, that we are moving forward to still receive the applications as we have done in the past. supported by the summaries and the applicant's view of the data. But we're now supplementing that with a view of the individual patient level data. And that requires all of the building stones that you just highlighted, Peter, to be in place. We need to have the people who are able to interrogate these data. We need to have the people who are able to analyze it. We need to have the IT infrastructure to receive the data and get up to the level that some of our international colleagues have already been for a couple of years, notably in Japan and in the US. So I think that the real world, the patient level data is a key component in what we will interrogate with these new digital tools going forward. And I know that there's already a pilot ongoing in the CHMP to interrogate patient level data for a concrete product and for a concrete application and evaluation. And at the DKMA, Data Analytics Centre, we are also getting ready for a pilot where we can basically test our capacity to receive, store and interrogate patient level data when we receive it from companies. So things are moving fast, but I know that patient level data and RCTs may not be the final answer to everything. We know that these very structured trials, they have in and exclusion criteria, and not all patients are eligible. So the RCT is by far the best way to demonstrate the efficacy and safety of a single intervention, such as a new drug. But in the complex cases where a patient is suffering from more than one disease, is taking more than one type of medicine, and may not always remember to take it, then we're getting into the real world data space where patients are suffering from multiple diseases and are indeed prone to not follow all the guidelines as rigorously as we would perhaps hope. And there, the real world effectiveness, the real world safety is something that we've started to take a great interest in, and also constitutes a large part of the second Big Data Task Force report. And perhaps you would care to comment on how to use real-world data, Peter.
So Nikolai, you've set me up beautifully to talk about real-world evidence, but before I do, just a thought that occurred to me that we didn't mention when we were talking about the building blocks. And a building block that I think is really important, both for the Danish Centre, but also more generally for the European regulatory network in big data and analytics, is a mandate. I've been working in the area of evidence generation for many, many years, and there's a limit to what you can achieve if you don't have a political and legal mandate. And with the recommendations of the Big Data Task Force, with the adoption by EMA of its regulatory science strategy, with the network strategy to 2025 being finalised, all of which have these recommendations on big data explicitly endorsed, and of course the European Commission's digital strategy, which puts right centre stage health data as an enabler for better health. We really do have a very clear mandate for change and for making things better. So I think that's a really important thing, and forgive me that I didn't go straight into real world evidence, but I just wanted to mention that. If we then just turn to real world evidence, you're absolutely right. Clinical trials are the bedrock of what we do. Cornerstone was the word you used, but of course there are limitations in terms of refined patient population control use, etc. And real-world evidence is not new. It's a relatively new term, but I think we just used to call it pharmacoepidemiology. It's observational techniques applied to healthcare data, and it's been going on for decades, particularly in the area of drug safety, also in disease epidemiology, and even in recent years to demonstrate efficacy and effectiveness of medicines, particularly in the area of rare diseases where randomized controlled trials weren't feasible for various reasons. There's some really important recommendations from the Big Data Task Force in this space, and there's a lot of action already underway to make this a reality. I think the first thing I will mention is that there's already a pilot at the EMA's Pharmacovigilance Risk Assessment Committee to look at how we can, in near real time, analyse healthcare data to support decisions going on in the committee. We're in discussions with the other committees, CHMP, the Paediatric Committee and so on, about use cases for real world evidence, so that as we build systems, as we start accessing and analysing healthcare data, we make sure that we're doing that in a way that will inform regulatory decisions, because that's our job, that's what we do. I must mention the priority recommendation, number one, if you like, the biggest and boldest of the recommendations, which was for what we call Darwin EU, so Data Analytics and Real World Interrogation Network. The ambition here is an EU-wide network to access and analyse healthcare data in a federated model, where we can then feed the analyses into regulatory decision making, both at a European level and a national level, with medicines regulators making up the main users, but potentially use cases going to health technology assessment, payers, even delivery of healthcare systems. And we are working on this in the context of the European Commission's ambitions for a European health data space. And that's a really, really exciting area where the way that we will succeed is by collaborating with stakeholders. And I think it's a nice opportunity of this launch, actually, to talk about the member states' central role for delivering Darwin, but also how we need to work across the spectrum of stakeholders to make that happen. Thanks.
Yeah, I think you're really nailing it here, Peter, because I think that in order for us to succeed on this really, really ambitious agenda and these really ambitious goals that we have set out with the Big Data Task Force recommendations, and not least the top 10 recommendations, and now with ambitious timeframes as outlined in the work plan for the top 10 recommendations that we have published recently. This can only happen if we collaborate. We need to collaborate and deliver on these ambitions. There is an urgency in delivering on these recommendations so that we get moving in this digital space for the benefit of the patient and start using, taking the use of patient-level data in clinical trials to the next level, complementing with real-world evidence where it makes sense. As you said, we've already done it in pharmacovigilance and safety for a number of years. We can harvest from that experience and bring it forward. But there's no doubt that when we look around this very vast landscape that is the European Union, not all member states are equally equipped to step up to the plate and grab this agenda and execute on it right away. Some member states may be more advanced than others. The DKMA Data Analytics Centre is one of those, and that's what we're celebrating today. So that's really great. We know that other member states are willing to join and contribute resources to this as well. And coordinated by the EMA, I'm sure that we can get all the member states on board, make sure that no one is left behind. But of course, today we can celebrate that the DKMA National Centre of Excellence Data Analytics Centre can spearhead this initiative. And this will, in my view, greatly benefit both the regulators and the innovators, as well as, most importantly, the patients. So I would like to say thank you to you, Peter, for discussing this with me today, and all the best to the new Analytics Centre.
And well, it's been a pleasure. Just to say, I mean, Europe is, we say, united by diversity. And as you say, different national competent authorities, different academic centres bring different strengths and different tools to any collaboration. And I think it's fantastic that the Danish agency is investing in and establishing its Data Analytics Centre. I believe it will be a model for excellence for analytics within medicines regulation. And I look forward to very close collaboration so that we can deliver the vision, and the vision is data-driven medicines regulation for the benefit of patients. So thanks, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you to both of you. Really important work ahead of us. I know several of us are eager to get going. And as you already alluded to, we are on the move forward. This concludes our opening today, but it certainly is only the official beginning for us here at the Data Analytics Centre. We are so much looking forward to collaborate with you, regardless if you're from academia, other regulatory agencies, patient organizations, technology vendors, or industry. We need collaboration to advance this field, and we especially need to work across specialties of medical, pharmacy, data and computer science, statistics, law, ethical, and human arts. Thank you for listening, and see you soon again.